2 first things first. I'm Jenna Wolfe alongside Nick Wright, Brandon Marshall, Kevin Wilds. And guys, you know, coming into the season, we kept throwing around names of teams that were going to be fantastic. We talked about the Ravens, we talked about the Chiefs, maybe the Patriots, and then Brandon Marshall comes in, he says, hang on. Everyone's forgetting about the Steelers, to which we said, you're right, we are. Last night,
Jenna,
further proof. Perhaps we have forgotten about the Steelers. Giving you some love, Brandon Marshall. Let us start there this morning. Look, Monday Night Football. Are you blushing? You might be. That's a football blush right there. We'll start there. Big return of Big Ben. Didn't take much. Giants, Steelers. Here we go. Ben Roethlisberger back after missing all but 2 games last year with that elbow injury. You wouldn't have known it last night. Ben throwing for 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to Juju Smith-Schuster and that defense. Man, that defense looked good last night. Held Saquon to 6 yards rushing. Could be the way the Giants played. Your Giants, Wilds. Joe Judge's Giants, they lose. That means the Steelers open the season with a win. Welcome back to the game, Big Ben. So, Brandon, let's start there. How did the quarterback look, Ben Roethlisberger, in his first game back?
I'm definitely blushing. You know, when I picked my little dark horse teams, I said the Colts. They didn't get the job done for me this past Sunday. I also talked about the Steelers. And there was people on this show that laughed at me. And that person was Nick Wright. And then there was also another person on the show who has these amazing facial expressions, Kevin Wilds. He's always throwing his arms up and he's making these faces. He laughed at me. So I just want to say this is the perfect way for my Pittsburgh Steelers to start the season. Big Ben knocked off the rust in the first quarter. The second quarter is exactly how we wanted it to look. Juju Smith-Schuster looked so good last night. He's probably the most happiest person on the planet. He has his quarterback back now. And then also our defense. Wow. You said it so brilliantly in the open. Our defense stopped the most explosive player in the NFL, Saquon Barkley. This guy has 6 rushing yards. That's impossible for today's running backs. How does that happen?
So Brandon, listen. I know we haven't been working together for, you know, all that incredibly long, but we've known each other for a decent amount of time. And I must say, I am a little taken aback by a lack of consistency from Friday to Tuesday. Now, you've been very consistent in the love of the Steelers, but on Friday, when the defending Super Bowl champions hung nearly 40 on a playoff team from last year, I was told, pump the brakes, calm down, it's week 1. But when the Steelers beat the losingest team in the NFL over the last 3 years, we're printing up parade charts. So listen, I'm just saying, you know, I'm just giving back to you what you so generously gave to me Monday. I got it. Yeah, go ahead.
I love it. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Yes, we don't want to overreact. Everybody's overreacting on Monday and Tuesdays after Monday Night Football games. But, Wilds, I'm just validating my point. That's all. When you have a hot take on TV, people laugh at you. Some people make these faces. Jenna, that's all I'm doing is validating that I said before the season that the Pittsburgh Steelers will win. Listen, Nick, you did this in basketball. You picked the Denver Nuggets to go 7. You picked them.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
all I'm doing here on the NFL side.
By the way, Brandon, I'm not attacking you. I actually encourage the slight tweaking of the goalposts to further validate your point. And I will go a step further. After being a semi-bad teammate in the beginning, I'm going to be a good teammate for you here. And I'm going to throw this to you, Wilds. It is true that the chart for the Steelers, if you were going to map out the scenario of how they could be a contender, it is the defense plays to the same level it played last year, and they just get a boost at quarterback play. Doesn't have to be great quarterback play, but a boost from the Duck and Mason to Big Ben, whatever he has left. And last night, Big Ben was a guy who looked like he did have more than a little bit left, so they have that going for them. Additionally, what you have with the Steelers is the defense, which we know great defenses, it's hard for that to duplicate year over year. The defense last night was exceptional. was as good as a defense can play. Granted, it was against Daniel Jones and Joe Judge's Giants. But I will say through 1 week, the Steelers did what you would need to do to say, oh, maybe they are on those at that fringe of the AFC contenders list, Wilds.
I agree. And Brandon, the question I have for you about your beloved Steelers, and by the way, everybody, Brandon is from that area in Pennsylvania, so don't take this as like the analysis of an all-pro wide receiver, an all-time NFL great. This is actually the analysis, and just like my Patriots analysis, of just a kid who grew up and is now on TV rooting for their favorite team and putting a bunch of statistics behind it. So, but still, Brandon,
that's right.
I'll ask you this. The Giants, and I don't want to say anything bad about Joe Judge. I don't want to. But the Giants looked very, very bad. And there was a point where Kirk Herbstreit said, hey, I give it to Joe Judge for sticking with the run. I respect it. And I'm like, yeah, that's the same type of respect that you have for the Titanic captain and the band that played on as the Titanic sank into the murky blue depths. There was a point where I was like, Joe Judge, please, with all the laps that we've done, you'd think he'd focus more on getting Saquon some real estate to run. So the question I have for you is this. Did it give you pause at all when you were watching your dominant Steelers defense, say like, this Giants team's not that good. Maybe I should pump the brakes a little bit?
No, Wilds. I mean, we're not schedule makers. There are people to get paid to do this. There's one guy that sits on Park Avenue in New York City in the middle of Manhattan, and that's his job. That's not the Steelers' job. That's not Coach Tomlin's job. That's not Juju's job. That's not Big Ben's job. However, I will say that, you know, we did what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to take advantage of a team that wasn't good. I don't know what's going on with the Giants, but they have some huge problems there. When you have, I truly believe this, and this is not a hot take, he is one of the most explosive players that I've ever seen. Just look at that screen from last night. He took that screen, probably took it almost 40 yards. Saquon Barkley, so explosive. When you see that, you have to use it. How do you get the ball in his hands more? If your offensive line is not going to create holes for you, then Coach Garrett, you have to be creative. I look at Alvin Kamara and the New Orleans Saints. To me, that is the example, that is the standard. You have to put together creative packages, whether that's Wildcat, you're seeing this guy literally take the ball and run zone read. I think there's other things that they can do to get this guy involved early. Jet sweeps. You look at what they're doing out in L.A. with the Rams and how they open up holes with just guys running across the formation. Coach Judge, Coach Garrett, you guys got to be in the lab right now this morning trying to figure it out because you have one of the most explosive players to ever strap it up.
Listen, Saquon's awesome, even if last night wasn't reflective of that. It's hard to blame last night on him. His average carry, his first contact was negative 0.7 yards, meaning he was touched on average before he even got to the line of scrimmage. The Giants, though, have major systemic issues. Listen, I know everyone is trying to set the bar so low for Daniel Jones that he can't help but overcome it. But this is a guy who's played 14 NFL games. 9 of them, he has had multiple turnovers. 13 of them, he has had at least 1 turnover. There's been 1 game in his career where he hasn't turned the ball over. And I am not ready to say Joe Judge doesn't know what he's doing. It's 1 game. But what I will say is his opening quarter as an NFL head coach.
Oh, now.
Well, no.
Now
well, listen, hold on. Well, as far as figuring out whether or not a coach knows what he's doing, I want to give him more time, to be fair. But just in that opening quarter, he called for a punt on 4th and 1 at the Steelers' 40. Unacceptable in 2020. He called for a field goal on 4th and goal from the Steelers' 2. Unacceptable in 2020. And when the fumblingest fumbler I've ever seen fumble, Daniel Jones, fumbled the football into the end zone for a Giants touchdown, and it was called incomplete. he didn't challenge. That's 4 points left on the board by Joe Judge. So maybe he'll get better, but I would just recommend Wilds a little less time in the muddy slip inside and with tennis balls on the hands, and a little more time reading analytics for dummies, because those are all layups. Those are all obvious, clear decisions that he should have made, Wilds.
Listening?
Just for the record, Jenna, 0 holding penalties courtesy of the tennis balls. 0 holding penalties.
Oh my
the
God.
tennis balls worked. They're gonna take over the league.
They couldn't hold because the Steelers were just running past them.
We now know why Big Ben wanted to come back so badly. He knew the team he had. He saw that defense. He said, I could work with that compared to what we had last year. All right, we'll take a break. Question for you. Who deserves more blame for the disconnect in Week 1, Baker or Odell? I got takes, Nick. We're talking Browns next.
Nice.
First things first. Sunday on Fox, Cowboys looking to bounce back after their season opening loss. They host the Falcons in their home opener this Sunday. Or you may see Jimmy G and the Niners taking on the Jets. All that NFL action kicking off at 1 Eastern. Check your local listings for the games in your area, or you can watch it on the Fox Sports app. Time right now for 4 things first. Collection of a couple things we saw, we love. Brandon, you love that Titans win.
Yeah, I mean, it was another team. All my predictions are coming true so far. I know Nick's going to try to crush me and say, oh, Brandon, you're contradicting yourself. It's Week 1. It's an overreaction. But this is coming true. The Titans played terrible, and they still won. So hats off to this team for getting a huge win in Monday Night Football.
All right, Kevin, Milwaukee's best for Giannis.
All right, so Woj tweeted out, ESPN sources, in a 3-hour lunch meeting. You can basically stop there. Look, I'll give you a 90-minute breakfast. I'll give you a 4-hour dinner. But I am not giving you a 3-hour lunch. That will just get you into trouble. There's nothing to talk about for 3 hours with Giannis. Here's what you do. Hey, we're going to give you the Supermax. It's around $250. It's more than any other team can give you. And we're going to go over the luxury tax and try to get Chris Paul. Then you look at it like, all right, you got 2 hours and 59 minutes left. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Eventually, around the 2-hour, 15-minute mark, you're like, what's up with your free throws, huh? You've been going down the last 4 years. You know, it's the same. What's the deal? Hey, you're a 2-time MVP, but you can't just have like a singular move to get to the basket besides that spin move. Like, we'd like to post you up. I'm telling you, 2-hour lunch, max Lasry next time. 3 hours, way too much, Jenna.
Nick, heads up play from Larry Fitz.
Yeah, I tried to get this in yesterday. I'm always crushing teams for bad game management. This was utter brilliance by Fitzgerald. The Cardinals trying to mount a comeback into the first half. The pass is not even to Fitzy. It's to Nuke. There is 10 seconds left when this play ends. He gets the ball from him, runs it to the middle of the field, hands it to the center. That is the single most efficient spike play that you can't run it faster. That is the breaking the speed of sound on the spike play. It can't be done better than that. That got them 3 points. It proved critical. Awesome. That was as smart as any play made this weekend.
Hey guys, there's an old expression in football that goes, if not by feet, then by fours. All fours. This is Steelers outside linebacker Ola Adaney, who will do anything to rush the passer, including do it from his belly, which is as far away from the passer as you could possibly get. But he does it. Crawl, 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 crawl. Watch it, watch it. Ready? No, but I will tell you this, great core strength involved in something like that. I once did the length of a football field just like that. Fantastic core strength. That was obviously my takeaway. Now, it proved ineffective. Daniel Jones got the pass off, but core strength is my takeaway from last night's game. Okay, let's pull back the curtain. So, in a commercial break yesterday, we started talking about the Browns and why Odell wasn't the star of Sunday's game. And as is often the case, Kevin Wild said, hey, save it for the show. So we did, and here we are, saving it for the show. The Ravens embarrassed the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. Baker and Odell clearly not on the same page. Odell just 3 catches for 22 yards. Head coach Kevin Stefanski saying the disconnect between his 2 stars is something we, quote, have to get to the bottom of. Brandon, these two already played an entire season together. This isn't a new relationship.
It's not good.
Baker knows Odell. Odell knows Baker. This was their 17th game on Sunday. So who do you think needs to be more accountable here, Baker or Odell?
I think everybody needs to take a chill pill and relax. I just think because of exactly what you said, they played last year and they spent a lot of time together in the offseason, that it should be better. But this is coach's job to get this right. And I think he's feeling the pressure inside the building that you have this star wide receiver, once in a lifetime wide receiver in talent, and you have to take advantage of it, and they can't find a way. So when I heard this, I was like, wow, this is not good, because obviously this is an internal discussion, and this is top of mind for a lot of folks in this organization. But when I watched the film, I literally sat down last night and I went through every single play. And I thought Coach did a tremendous job of calling the game and getting Odell in position. Now, I'm saying this from experience. Like, my skill set is totally different than Odell's. But we're #1 wide receivers. I was a #1 wide receiver, and I think it holds true for most guys. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas. You get the same looks. Teams are going to double you. They're going to roll coverage to you. They're going to disguise coverage, and that's what you see. So when I look at what they did with Odell, there's two ways you can approach it. You can leave a guy outside and just say, okay, scheme as you want to. And then there's another way that you can approach it, and that's, let's move this guy around so it's hard to find where he's at and game plan against him. He played X. He played in the slot. He played Z. He ran slant from the slot. He ran option from the slot. They play action on first down and tried to take shots and get the ball down the field. He ran slant from the X wide receiver on the short side of the ball. He was targeted 10 times. And when you look at it, I was like, wow, is this about the Cleveland Browns or is this about the Baltimore Ravens? And it really was about the Baltimore Ravens. When you look at what they did, they had defensive linemen jumping underneath his routes. They had edge press rushers jumping underneath his routes when he was at Z or X and he was outside the numbers. So they did a hell of a job trying to take Odell out of this game. So I really think everybody needs to take a chill pill. Definitely there's pressure there. They need to figure it out because you have an emotional player who can really go into hiding if you don't get him involved. But here's the thing, though. This is what, and I have to say this. I have to say that I was an emotional player. And this is what Coach Shanahan and the Denver Broncos did for me to get me involved. They would come to me before the game and say, Brandon, this is a game where you're probably not going to be involved much. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw a smoke route. That's a one-step hitch. It's an extended run. If you get 4 yards, great. But we want you to touch the ball. We want you to be a part of it. If it goes for 40, that's icing on the cake. They also ran screens. They ran bubbles. Half of my catches every single year came off of those extended running plays where they just tossed the ball out to me and let me make something happen. You didn't see that. So I think there's huge opportunity for them to get Odell involved early and be honest with the guy and say, look, we're playing against a Baltimore Ravens team that's historically taken out the #1 wide receiver that plays outside by the numbers. So be patient and understand that this may not be your game.
Well, so listen, you obviously hit on a bunch of super important things there. The last one that I want to focus on is the emotional component of this. And I understand the audience and certain folks are going to be like, listen, everyone wants their wide receiver to be Larry Fitzgerald. I just showed him. He has a football IQ off the charts. Totally emotionally even-keeled. Almost no diva to him whatsoever. Is not going to throw a fit on the side. That's great. Awesome. But there is one Larry Fitzgerald. And he comes around about once a generation, if that. Other guys, it is the coach's job to get the most out of the talent, knowing the talent's own either physical, emotional, or mental limitations. And I think understanding that Odell is a guy that is highly emotional, for good or for bad. That is a sensitive guy, for good or for bad. That, Brandon, your point about going to him before the game, if you think it's going to be a tough matchup for him, you got Marcus Peters, you got the Ravens defense, and kind of mentally preparing him for that. or finding ways, what could be a Kareem Hunt 4-yard run just as easily can be an Odell Beckham Jr. 4-yard catch. And I get it. Some people will say, oh, my God, he makes $16 million a year. You shouldn't have to do that. But, Brandon, what I would say is maybe you shouldn't have to do it. But if the idea is to get the most out of a player, that's what you should be doing. Like, you were a super emotional player, and you were at your best when you were feeling great. And so it was the coach's job to put you in that mental state, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it. The wide receiver is the only position in my mind on the field where our success is in the hands of someone else.
Yes.
You have the quarterback, you have the offensive line, you have the play caller. So, you know, it's an emotional roller coaster at times for a wide receiver because if you don't perform, you don't get paid. If you don't get paid and you don't perform, you're probably not going to be on the team. So how do you put the team first and put the team over your selfish needs, right? It's a hard thing to do. I just think that Coach Shanahan, Jeremy Bates, and Jay Cutler did a phenomenal job managing me in Denver. There was one game where I tied the record, the NFL record for most catches in a game, 18. Terrell Owens, he held it for a very long time. Before that game, Jeremy Bates came to me. He said, Brandon, I'm being honest with you. This is not your game. We're playing against the San Diego Chargers. We got to get the ball out quick. You have lights out. You have this dominant defensive line. It's just not your game. He said, so this is what I'm going to do. In the first 15 plays, I'm going to throw you a screen. I'm going to throw you a bubble. And then throughout the game, I'm going to try to figure it out, but you need to stick with me because they knew in the second quarter, the third quarter, if I didn't touch the ball, I could go the opposite way. There could be an incident on the sideline where you're seeing me maybe crying. You can see me walking up to Jay Cutler like, bro, what's going on? So I think that's a perfect example how to approach an emotional wide receiver,
Brandon,
because if you don't, it could be at your detriment.
Quickly, before we get to Kevin, it's not like this is the first time we're meeting Odell Beckham Jr. He was emotional with the Giants. He was emotional his first year with Cleveland. We know he's emotional. This is a new head coach who did copious amounts of research on his talent. If that is something that should happen in the NFL, why was that not a priority? When Kevin Stefanski came out and says, hey, we finally got Odell healthy, this is it, we want this offense to run through him, shouldn't that just be just a prerequisite? Let's have a conversation. So then it comes from coaching. Maybe that's where the accountability should be.
It's about leadership. There's a reason why Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick and they dominate year in, year out, right? Because he understands how to approach people and meet people where they're at and bring his whole team together. Not everyone can work with a malcontent, emotional player. And that's the goal, right? Like, you said it, Nick. Not everyone's Larry Fitzgerald or A.J. Green. Majority of the wide receivers in this league comes with a little something. So you have to be able to manage that on the field and off the field. I think Coach has what it takes to do it, but it's more about understanding the psyche. All you got to do is throw the ball to this guy early. That's it. Throw him a hitch, throw him a screen, throw him a bubble. Don't worry about the big shots. Don't worry about the 15-yard comebacks. Don't worry about the slants. That will come because now you got Baker Mayfield, who's a young quarterback who can be good, but when he drops back, what is he thinking about? Baker Mayfield's thinking about, if I don't throw to Odell Beckham Jr., I got to go to the sideline, got to see him pouting, potentially kicking the net, hitting his head against the net. Like, that's what's going through his head. You want this young quarterback dropping back and naturally and organically going through his progressions and not forcing anything. And I had to learn this the hard way with my quarterbacks. I used to tell Fitz, right? I was like, Fitz, if you see me angry or pissed off on the sideline, don't worry about it. You play your game, because if you start forcing it, then we're looking at 3 interceptions, 4 interceptions, and we lose. When it's one-on-one, just come to me. Just keep it simple.
Jenna, just for the record, I'm out here like Odell. Brandon's throwing the ball to Jarvis Leonard. I haven't talked the whole segment, so you guys got to give me the ball early sometimes too. You know?
I love that.
Don't worry, watch. Tomorrow morning before the show, I'm going to ask you a super, super simple question. Even though I know you very well, you can answer that simple question.
And just for the record,
and then we're going to move on. Would that make you happy?
And guess what? There's 2 Larry Fitzgeralds, Nick. I could have had that. Thrown that in. I could have said there's 2 Larry Fitzgeralds.
Hey,
Dad's Larry Fitzgerald.
Hey guys. Speaking of accountability, Kawhi Leonard. Can he and the Clippers avoid total disaster tonight, Game 7? We're talking hoops. First things first.
Wow, that was awesome.
Back here with Chris Broussard previewing Nuggets-Clippers Game 7. Nuggets with all the momentum here. That's what happens when you have monster comeback wins over a Clippers team many picked to win it all, Broussard. Just saying, I just threw that out there. It was natural. It kind of just fit the end of the sentence. The winner tonight earns a trip to the Western Conference Finals where the Lakers await. So, if you're the head coach, how do you get your team fired up for the game? Oh, you don't have to.
Know what you're going to say to the team tomorrow yet?
No, I'm going to say, let's go win. Like, there's no, rah-rah speeches are very overrated, Dan. They last about 3 minutes, and you come running out, and you're fired up, and then 3 minutes later, you got to focus on playing basketball. So there's no, like, secret speech. You know, that's for, you know, the movies. You know, the real thing is you got to have them prepared.
Vehemently disagree. I have a pro-rah-rah speech mentality approach to absolutely everything. Okay, Broussard, let's start with you. What are you expecting from Game 7 tonight?
Well, first of all, let me say this. Despite the proclamations of Nick Wright, the Clippers have never been my beloved Clippers, okay? They're only beloved to the few dozen Angelinos. No. You talk about it, Nick, like I grew up some Clippers fan. There's a few dozen Angelinos.
You've seemed like it all year.
No, I have been on the Clippers since Christmas, but I am now off of them. All right? I am off of the Clippers.
Whoa.
They have upset me so much. Now, I do have them winning tonight. I do have the Clippers winning tonight.
We're back.
But they will not cheat the process and win a championship. They will win tonight, but I'm off the Clippers.
Hold on.
What happened?
Wait, no.
Unacceptable.
I have to jump in.
Unacceptable.
No. I have
Bam,
led astray. Led astray. We know. No. Hold on.
Can't do that, Jenna.
I gotta jump in. You know how, like in politics, someone goes to the Oval Office and submits their resignation, and then the president says, "I decline to accept." Broussard, I reject your resignation of the Clippers. They have had no injuries. There has been nothing, no systemic changes. There has been no facts on the ground that have changed. This is who they've been all year, who you've been writing all year, and you can't now, at the last second, be like, oh, I'm going with LeBron. Of course you should have been going with LeBron. Of course you should have known that the Clippers not giving a damn about the regular season was going to catch up with them. And of course you should have known that Doc Rivers, by the way, Doc, it's very curious. It's like rah-rah speeches are overrated. The part of that he didn't say, but maybe he should have is, and as it happens, the only time my teams haven't wildly underachieved was when I had Kevin Garnett, one of the greatest rah-rah guys ever. Maybe I should have learned from him. Maybe then I wouldn't have underachieved with T-Mac and CP3 and about to with Kawhi and Paul George. Neither here nor there.
point,
Broussard, this is who they've always... Right, like he says rah-rah speech is overrated.
Why?
Look, one of the greatest coaches of all time is known for rah-rah speeches, Pat Riley. Pat Riley had a rah-rah trunk of photos when he led the Heat to the championship in 2006. And you're right, Nick, this would be Doc Rivers' second time losing a 3-1 lead in the playoffs. Go back to 2015 against Houston. So,
no,
look,
it would be his third.
If they lose,
Broussard, it would be his third
time.
He blew one with T-Mac.
Okay.
He blew one with T-Mac.
That's right,
Prime T-Mac in Orlando. There's only been 6 of these in the last 20 years. 2 of them already have been Doc. It could be a third. And so, like, Brandon, Broussard is saying, you know, he still thinks the Clippers will win tonight, but then they'll get dispatched by the greatest player ever. Brandon, I think you and me don't even think they get there. Like, I think the Clippers are, at this point, they've been exposed as a front runner, and go ahead.
They're toast. No, yeah, they're done. They're toast. But, you know, Chris, I've been watching you for 15 years on television. Yeah. I have lost all respect for you. I've lost all respect for you. There's no way you can stand up here on national television and go back. This is your team. You can't now say, oh, this isn't my team. I didn't grow up cheering for this team. There's no way, Chris.
My team?
No, absolutely not.
Hold on. It's take integrity. I would never change within a series. But before they play the Lakers, I got to pick who I think's going to win. I'm supposed to analyze what I see and pick who I think's going to win. Now, I'm not saying it's out of the possibility. I think they'll win tonight. I'm not going back on my Clippers pick in this series. I believe they will win tonight. I thought it would be 6. It'll be 7. But I don't believe they will beat the Lakers going forward. That's all I'm saying.
Broussard, there's 3 Clippers who haven't shown up. Montrez hasn't shown up. He went from 19 to 10, can't guard Joker. Lou Williams can't shoot the 3 anymore. He hasn't shown up. And you, longtime Clipper fan ever since you were a child, rooting for the San Diego Clippers and Bill Walton. You were the 3rd Clipper who hasn't shown up. I need you to go back to your boyhood when you had a picture of Bill Fitch on your wall and you were listening to the teletype from San Diego. You need to summon all the energy of Chris Kaman and Quentin Richardson and Darius Smiles, just like you have for your entire career, and balancing a journalistic career with being a bleeding heart Clipper fan. Stay with it, buddy. I know it's been tough to see this downfall. You got to stay with it. I also do not accept your resignation. You got to stay with it, Broussard.
There's something more important than take integrity, and that's integrity.
Wow.
I can't sit on here and say I think the Clippers are going to go to the championship.
That's a good point.
When I don't.
Come on.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is.
But Chris, why? But Chris, like how are we in this situation? You know, that let's move the conversation forward to that.
Okay.
Like, what is going on with the Clippers? Because when you look at it, Paul George and Kawhi, they're not playing bad. So what really is the problem?
They don't have the chemistry. I thought they could cheat the process. They can't. They play 18 games together with their best squad. All right, they took. Nick said it. They took the regular season lightly. They thought they could turn it on and off. Marcus Morris said it. They can't. It's as simple. Now again, I think they win tonight. They just can't win it all. I don't think.
How much of this is?
I think there's. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was just going to ask, how much of this is the Denver Nuggets? You know, we're talking about the Clippers, and it's the headlines, and we tend to do this on television talking sports, but it's always like, oh, the better team, they're losing, so let's talk about them. But when I look at it, man,
Nuggets got heart. And we talked about Doc. This is the 2nd straight series being out-coached. Yeah. We got to look at Doc Rivers. Get him motivated. Get him to execute. He's doing none of it. They're isoing too much. He's saying they're not moving the ball, but it keeps happening.
Yeah.
And the defensive schemes aren't working. Now, again, I believe they'll win tonight. But going forward, I don't think they can cheat the process. I think next year they'll come back and be better. I think if they lose in these playoffs, it'll be good for them.
Next year.
But assuming they're together, they'll be better next year. But you can't cheat the process. It's rare for a team to come together right away and win a championship. We saw it in 08 with Doc's Celtics, but look at Miami, the Big Three in 2011. Look at the Barkley, Olajuwon, Drexler Rockets. Never won it. It is rare for this to happen. I thought it could happen this year, but I'm off of it.
Okay, 2 quick things. One is the only reason that I am not apoplectic about Broussard changing his pick is because the line he had about what's more important than take integrity is actual integrity. That wouldn't resonate with me with anyone on television except for avowed man of God and leader of men, Chris Broussard. I almost feel like he is like, gosh darn it, he played the trump card. He's played his big joker. He's like, man, he's like, I do leadership seminars. You can't ask me to do a pick I don't believe in. But it is a little simpler, Brandon, than everything we're talking about as far as why the Nuggets are in the position they're in. What did I say last week about Lakers-Rockets? NBA history. 85% of series have gone to the team with the best player. And it is a fair question to ask in this series, who has been the best player? Because I believe it's been Nikola Jokic. And like you can say Kawhi's better overall but I need to see the evidence of it. And you can say, oh, you're not accounting the defensive end. Well, Kawhi's individual defense has not done a damn thing for the Clippers as they've blown 15-plus point leads in the last 2 games. Jokic has been the best guy in this series, and that, as big of anything, is one of the biggest reasons why the Nuggets are in this position.
All right, Game 7 tonight, Nuggets, Clippers. Chris Broussard, stick around. I have a feeling we're talking about this again. Hey, did Bruce Arians call out Tom Brady for his poor play in Week 1? You know why? Because he's got integrity. Talking Bucs next. First things first.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Start your Saturday strong, 10 a.m. Eastern with the big noon kickoff show, followed by the big noon game of the week. Houston takes on Baylor on Fox and the Fox Sports app. Back here talking Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not quite the start that Tom Brady had hoped for. He was picked off twice by the Saints, sacked 3 times in the loss. His head coach, Bruce Arians, pretty blunt in his assessment of Brady's Bucs debut. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Knows how to bounce back, and he knew he didn't play very well. And it's not what he expects from himself, nor do we expect. So I would anticipate him to have a little more grit and a little more determination this week.
A little more grit, a little more determination, maybe play a little better. We welcome in Brian Westbrook. Brian, what'd you make of what Bruce Arians had to say? Try harder. Be less 43.
I had no problem with Bruce Arians said. I think he was absolutely right. But I'll tell you this. I played for Andy Reid, and Andy Reid, even after bad games, he would come to you in film, and he would say, you need to do all these things better. He would talk to you in front of the team. He would say, okay, guys, here's some things that you personally need to do better. But when he got in front of the media, he never would throw his players underneath the bus. He would never say, Brian Westbrook had a bad game, Donovan McNabb had a bad game. He would always say, as a coach, I need to put these guys in a better position. And that always drove the media crazy. But now you have Bruce Arians, who is a different guy. It's a lot of different ways to coach your players. And if you listen to that interview, that whole interview, Tom Brady wasn't the only guy that Bruce Arians threw underneath the bus. He threw a lot of different guys underneath the bus. And really, the reporters, they began asking them specifically about, well, how did this guy play and how did this guy play? And Bruce Arians said, well, this guy did good. This guy needs to do better. So he had no problem. I think he was fair. He talked about everybody in the same exact way. I had to believe when Tom Brady went down to Tampa, he desperately wanted to be out of New England. And Bruce Arians said, listen, I'm going to keep it real with everybody. I'm going to coach you just like everybody else. I'm going to hold you accountable. And I have to believe Tom Brady would expect something like this after the game that he played on Sunday. And Brandon, to me, this is exactly what you want. You want integrity from your coach. If you were one of those players on that football team and saw how Tom Brady played, and if Bruce Arians got in front of the cameras and said, hey, we have nothing to worry about, all these guys did bad, and Tom needs to improve, there's no integrity there. The players on that football team want to make sure that everyone is held accountable, and I think it starts with Tom Brady, and Bruce Arians did a great job of that in his interview.
Brandon.
I like Bruce. I really do. He's the type of coach I would want to play for. But this is all bad. This is bad. Like, you don't do that. You just sit it, right? Like, Andy Reid would never do that. Coach Shanahan barely did it. He did it probably a handful of times in my 4 years with him. I mean, I rarely seen it. Bill Belichick didn't do that. Bill Belichick coached Tom Brady harder than anyone has ever coached Tom Brady. Think about that. Like, since he was a boy, Bill Belichick is a guy that stood in front of the team meeting when Tom was sitting at the front and said, you didn't play well. Yep. He's notorious for calling out Tom Brady. Tom doesn't... I'm sorry, guys, but this is just... I just don't understand what value this adds. Because when you look at a star player does 2 things when he's standing in front of the camera. Number 1, when they lose, they take the responsibility. I got to play better. And when they win, hey, it was my teammate, right? So we're trained to stand in front of the camera and say the right things. And I just don't understand why Bruce would have this type of conversation with the media, adding more fuel to this fire. There's already so many other distractions. You got COVID-19. You just lost a big game in the season opener. It's just more distractions. I don't like it. I think Bruce is going about it the wrong way. If I'm Tom Brady, I'm looking at it and I'm like, look, my left tackle played bad. You gave me a right rookie tackle. Right? Like, this is Mike Evans stopped running down the middle of the seam. That pick is on him. But Tom Brady didn't say that in his presser. He just said, look, there's some things we have to clean up. So if I'm Bruce Arians, I think you really got to look yourself in the mirror and check this.
So, Brandon, I totally understand why, as a player, this could rankle you. As someone who's obviously never been a player, I look at it and I'm like, okay, this was one of the 3 most watched events, television shows, sporting event of 2020. And I say that to say this. The media knows Tom Brady played bad. It's not like Tom Brady had somebody, everyone's like, wow, Tom Brady played great. And then Bruce Arians like, let me debunk that theory. Everybody knew Brady stunk. So Arians was just confirming what everyone already knew. And part of Tom Brady's legend, and you guys both alluded to it, Brian and Brandon, is that he loves being coached hard. That part of the Patriot way was that Belichick could stand up in those meetings and excoriate Brady. So I don't think it's unreasonable for Bruce Arians, when they lose a game in large part because they're most veteran,
publicly,
their highest
that's the
paid,
issue.
I got it, but they were very, very public, obvious mistakes, Brandon. It's like you've got your highest paid, highest profile, most important player who played terribly. To me, and Brandon, tell me if I'm wrong, if Bruce Arians goes out in the press conference like, I think Brady played well, he's not taken seriously.
So if this is the right way to do things, then why didn't Bill Belichick do it? He's never done it. Well, he's never done it, and obviously he has the perfect formula for winning. No, he doesn't. Sure, you don't stand. You don't stand. You don't. That's a card that you keep in your back pocket for week 15, week 16, and you need to really get somebody going. But to open up the season and call out the GOAT that way, I think it's a recipe for disaster. You just don't see coaches doing that. It adds no value at all. If I'm a player, I'm looking at it because if that's the case, then you're telling Tom Brady he can do it. You're telling every other player in the locker room they can do it. Oh, it was that guy. Let's point the finger at every one of us. The blame game. It was my left tackle. It was my right tackle. It was Mike Evans. You don't do that. It's not good chemistry, and it breaks down your locker room.
What do you think, Wilds?
Brandon, he's a 43-year-old man. Like, he's got 6 Super Bowl rings. He's not a Fabergé egg. Like, you can toughen him up a little bit. Like, give me the only issue I have is Bruce Arians kind of like running off at the mouth and being like, yeah, I'm prematurely knocking on Brady, because Brandon, you had it right. Here's a quote I want to show you. Arians said after the game that the pick, the first one, Brandon, was the result of an overthrown pass against cover 2. But Monday, after watching the film, he clarified that Evans should have, quote, no doubt kept the route going, as it was against quarters coverage, which opened up the middle of the field. So I don't have an issue with him saying, like, hey, Tom Brady played bad. But now Bruce Arians is backtracking on criticism. I think that is more of a concern rather than giving Tom Brady some well-deserved lumps, Brandon.
Yeah, Brian. I don't know if you want to jump in here again. I just think it's bad. You know, it's like on the airwaves this morning. That's all we're talking about. Instead of us talking about them losing and what they need to do to move forward, we're talking about all these headlines. It's a distraction. You know, you're putting Mike Evans in a bad spot, Tom Brady in a bad spot. You're putting yourself in a bad spot when you really have a great opportunity to do something tremendous this year.
Well, here's the thing about Tom Brady. We know that he's a student of the game. We know that he's also a student of coaches. I have to believe that when he went down there with Bruce Arians, this isn't the first time that Bruce Arians has called out players. This is not the first time that he's called out even some of the mistakes that he has made. So I have to believe that Bruce Arians was, number one, 100% honest with Tom when he came down there. I'm going to coach you like everyone else, because here's the most important thing. We don't have a bunch of time to be building things down here in Tampa. We got to win right now. You don't bring in Tom Brady to try to build a system and win in 4 or 5 years. You need to win right now. So we don't have time to kind of measure our words. We have to go out there and win right now. And Tom Brady accepted that. He has been coached hard by Bill Belichick. He hasn't been called out in the media in this way, but he has been coached hard before. So for Tom Brady, I think that he's always been his toughest critic, and this is just another thing for him to go out there and try to overcome.
I agree, Brian. I don't think there's no way, shape, or form was this a surprise to Tom Brady. I'm sure he knew that Bruce Arians was going to call him out on it. I'm sure they spoke before the season that he was going to be coached hard. All right, Bucs do host Carolina next week. A chance for Brady to totally redeem himself. On the other side, what's on the line for Kawhi and the Clippers? We got a little Game 7 tonight. This is First Things First. Oh, Broussard back with us.
Nice.
Laker fan.
Sunday on Fox, Dak, Zeke, Cowboys in their home opener against Matt Ryan and the Falcons, or you may see Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers taking on the Jets. All that NFL action kicks off 1 Eastern. Check local listings for the games in your area, or you can watch it on the Fox Sports app. And we are back here with Chris Broussard. We're talking some Nuggets, some Clippers, and a big Game 7 tonight. Felt like I was reading a little story time to my kids. The Clippers on the verge of their first Western Conference Finals berth, but also on the verge of a total meltdown. They led 3-1 in this series and had a 22-point lead late in Game 6. But regardless, here we are. How very existential of me. Game 7 tonight. Here's Doc Rivers on how he will get his team ready.
Know what you're going to say to the team tomorrow yet?
No, I'm going to say, let's go win. Like, there's no run speeches are very overrated, Dan. They last about 3 minutes, and you come running out and you're fired up, and 3 minutes later you got to focus on playing basketball. So there's no like secret speech. You know, that's for you know, the movies. You know, the real thing is you got to have them prepared.
All right, Broussard, what will it mean for Kawhi and the Clippers if they do in fact lose this game tonight?
Well, for Kawhi, it would mean that all the talk about him being the best player in the world would cease. I thought that talk was premature anyway, but he's in the running, and I felt like this postseason we would see who indeed is the best player in the world between Kawhi, LeBron, and earlier on you could say throw Giannis in there. But LeBron has established himself still at 35 as the best player in the world. All that said, though, Kawhi Leonard's a made man. He's got 2 championships. I know he didn't lead the Spurs to the championship, but he certainly led the Raptors to the championship last year. And so he's a made man. This would not hurt his reputation at all. Again, I said earlier, it is rare that a team just gets thrown together right away and wins a championship. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh couldn't be thrown together and win a championship. So what this would show is that, as I said earlier, you cannot cheat the process. Okay, Kawhi hasn't practiced a lot this year. He's low managed. Paul George has missed a lot of the season. The Clippers' attitude overall has been that we can turn it on when we need to. The regular season isn't that important. We got the most talent in the league. We will win. Losing, I don't think they'll lose tonight, but losing either tonight or to the Lakers will actually be good for them, because next season they will come back into the season with a chip on their shoulder.
You got to be kidding me.
They'll come in with a chip on their shoulder, and they will take the regular season seriously, work on their chemistry, and then maybe next year they'll win the championship.
Broussard, you can't argue that not winning the title this year would be good for them because it helps them win the title next year. Even if that's true, they would just be net even on titles.
Sounds like he did that.
It's totally insane.
Obviously, they want to win the championship this year. Well, here's my point, though. What does LeBron James say about 2011 when he lost to Dallas and melted down?
Yes.
Ultimately, it was better. It made him better. Okay? That's all I'm saying about this. Of course they want to win it this year. But if they don't, it will make them better for next year. That's all I'm saying.
I think you are so wildly underplaying what losing tonight would mean for Kawhi. It's one thing if they get beat by the Lakers in a tough series. I don't think it's an indictment on them. I don't think people are crushing them. That is a totally different thing. But it's not just that, it's hard to come together and win a title in 1 year. It's you would have blown a 3-1 lead to a team full of young guys with 0 championships between them. It is you would have blown a 3-1 lead where in Game 5 you were up 15 in the second half. Where in Game 6 you were up 19 in the second half. And you mentioned Kawhi's a made man. He is, however, the narrative all year, Brandon, has been that Kawhi Leonard has a chance. He and LeBron both have a chance to become first player with 3 Finals MVPs on 3 different teams. If they lose tonight, America as a whole, I set your watch to it, will start far more accurately remembering that first Finals MVP. Because all Finals MVPs are not created equal. And when they tell the story of, he's won Finals MVP with 2 times with 2 different teams, it kind of glosses over that year with the Spurs. He was a 12-point-a-game player. And that Finals, Games 1 and 2, he had 9 points and 9 points. So this narrative that should have never started, is he the best player in the world? Where is he going to be in the all-time pantheon when he's not in the top 200 in all-time scoring? All of that will cease permanently if you blow a 3-1 lead in the second round to the Nuggets. And for Doc, Brandon, when there's only been 6 blown 3-1 leads in the last 20 years, and he has a chance to have 3 of them himself with prime T-Mac, prime Chris Paul, and now prime Kawhi, tomorrow will be an absolute open season on Doc Rivers if they lose tonight, Brandon.
Yeah, I just don't know the answer to this, right? Because rah-rah speeches obviously don't work. You heard Doc say that. You know, they're playing really good defense. You got 3 perimeter defenders that can really guard anybody in the league. And then obviously you got PG-13, who's actually playing decent. You know, he went with 30-plus the last couple games. So, I mean, when you look at it, it's like, where do you fix it? So when you really break it down, to me, the conversation is more about the Denver Nuggets. You know, Jokic is playing lights out. Like, I don't know how you stop this shot, this Dirk Nowitzki shot, you know, off balance, on one leg and throw it up, bottom of the net. I just don't know how you stop that. And then you have Murray, which I'm not expecting a lot from. You know, this guy comes in and then in the key moments, he's hitting a big shot. But they've really done a great job of stabilizing him. To me, in this game, it's going to come down to Gary Harris. It's going to come down to Michael Porter Jr. really stepping up and playing lights out. If these guys can find the basket, I don't think the Clippers have a chance. And now we're going to go into an offseason. There's going to be a lot of speculation. Do we blow it up? Do they stick together? And in my head, it's just like you just got to chop it up to like we're just outplayed. That's what you got to look at it. You got to blame the bubble. You know, you got Paul George coming in and say, I just didn't feel it. And, you know, obviously I don't want to take his mental health for granted. But, you know, he spoke up and said, like, look, I was depressed and dealing with a little anxiety. So you got to think that has trickled down into the locker room in a major way. And if I'm Paul George and I'm Kawhi, you just got to have some real conversations this offseason and fix it. Because running to a new team is not going to fix it. Firing Coach Rivers is not going to fix it. You guys have everything you need. There's no excuse. You're in a good organization. You have an owner that will give you anything you want. You have a Hall of Fame head coach, and you have 2 superstar players. What else do you guys need? Right now, you're just being outplayed in the biggest moments.
Okay. So I got a few things. There's zero chance, even if they lose, there's zero chance that Doc Rivers is being fired. Like, Steve Ballmer loves Doc Rivers, so there's zero chance that would happen, even if he does, even this is his 3rd 3-1 lead. I want to go back to Broussard for a second. Broussard, you let me down. You really let me down. I've been riding with you this entire time. And Nick, when they were down 3-1, we tried to, Nick, get off the Nuggets. He refused to move off the Nuggets. And now, next thing you know, you come on this show and you're putting more chips on the roulette board. And you said, oh, they're cheating the process. There's load management. It's hard to come together.
You took notes.
You knew all this stuff.
I love it.
We were defending it together, buddy. We were Blazer buddies, and now we were Clipper buddies against Nick, teamed up, and then you're just abandoning me.
I still don't know if you picked the Blazers. I still don't know if you picked the Blazers in that series with the Lakers. But hold on. I am not switching my pick in the series. And even if the Lakers-Clippers series had started, I would not switch. I would have to just suck it up and take the L. I am switching before the series begins. I think the Clippers win tonight and get to the Lakers, and I am saying now I think the Lakers will win. That's my job as an analyst. It's not to be a cheerleader. It's not to root for a team. It is to say who I believe will win.
But it's also,
and I think the Lakers will win.
It's also to be fair, you're right, that is your job as an analyst. As an added bonus of the job, you would like to not have to series by series change picks because your chess pieces keep getting knocked off the board like you're playing Bobby Fischer. But listen, as you've said many times, I'm just a young analyst. I'm just a young analyst that goes with my head.
Wet behind the ears.
What'd you say? Oh, goes with my heart instead of my head. Not the savvy veteran Chris Broussard who's been covering the league since pre-merger years. So what do I know?
Take it,
I
Broussard.
do, however, know this. America, if you are not betting on tonight's game, if you do not have a rooting interest, if you are just a fan of the NBA, it is better for as much as we all want to see Clippers-Lakers, it is better for the NBA if the meltdown is complete and the Nuggets win, because long-term, it will end this level of load management. The idea that you can have a superstar come in and say, I want 1 out of 4 games off, will be over forever. So if you want to get back to guys playing at least 70 to 75 games, well, Wildes, you can say no, it won't. He's the only guy in the league who does it. Nobody else load manages the way Kawhi does. And if his season ends in utter shambles, it's not happening anymore.
And he scores 35 points because
lose.
Montrezl Harrell can't guard Joker. It has nothing to do with load management.
Yeah, I don't know if Kawhi's going to come out of this and say, you know, I think I'm going to play every game next year. All right, we got to go to break. Broussard, enjoy watching the games tonight. Can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you, as always. Coming up, is it already panic time for Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys? Next, first things first.
All right, guys.
All right, we'll talk some Dak Prescott in a second. But first, sponsored by Mattress Firm, where they help you rest easy. Brandon, check out Steelers rookie Chase Claypool with the toe drag swag on his first career catch. But Brandon, was this a better throw or a better catch?
Listen, it's week 1. I don't want to overreact. But there's guys on this set that said that Ben Roethlisberger wasn't happy. This is a better catch. I mean, could you ask for better ball placement? Man, Nick, what do you think? Is Ben healthy or not?
Oh, yeah, well, I said I thought Ben was cooked. Ben didn't look cooked yesterday. That was a perfect throw and an even better catch. I mean, I thought it was a great throw by Big Ben. I got it. Listen, I give credit.
Thank you.
I give credit.
Good. I'm figuring out pretty quickly the bar is super high for wide receivers to do something great on this show. Back here with Brian Westbrook, we're talking Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, if this was a show about burpees, it would be the same with me, Brandon. Dallas looking to get back on track after dropping their season opener to the Rams Sunday night. So the Cowboys will now shift their sights to a Week 2 matchup with the Atlanta Falcons, Sunday, 1 Eastern on Fox. Head coach Mike McCarthy already with a sense of urgency when it comes to winning. Take a listen.
I think overall, just to give you an overall assessment of our football team, we looked like a football team that played its first game last night in some areas, and in other areas, I thought we did a lot of really good things. We have a grading index that we put a lot of time into, and so we're closer than you may think we are. But at the end of the day, our honeymoon is over. It's time to win games, and that's our focus.
All right, someone say the time was before the season started, but Brian Westbrook, this was everyone's first weekend of football. Nobody had a preseason. No one really had OTA, so a lot of these teams are really getting to know each other for the first time. What did you make with personnel? What did you make of what Mike McCarthy had to say?
Well, I think he's absolutely right. The honeymoon is over. The reason why you bring Mike McCarthy in is to win right away. And most times when you're a new head coach going into a situation, you just don't have a bunch of talent on your team. This is most times. I guess the Browns would be a little bit different. But on this football team in Dallas, I mean, you have a ready-made offense. You have an all-star running back. You have a very good quarterback. You had an offensive line that came into the season as one of the better offensive lines in the league. And then you have 3 receivers on the offensive side of the ball that all think they can get over 1,000 yards and be #1 receivers. Defense, I mean, you paid a bunch of people money on the defensive side of the ball. So this team should be ready-made to win. You kind of also have to mention there's been a lot of analysts, there's been a lot of people that talk about football and coaches as well that think that this team the Cowboys have the opportunity to make it in the talent to make it to the Super Bowl. So, of course, this is win-now mode for Mike McCarthy and this football team, and we did not see that in the first week. And I have to be honest, I'll tell you guys this. When I saw Mike McCarthy come into this team, I'm saying, you know, with the year off, I'm thinking I'm going to get Andy Reid creativity. I think I'm going to get Kyle Shanahan type of creativity and play design. And what we saw this week was not that. We didn't see a bunch of motions. We didn't see a bunch of guys moving around. We didn't see a bunch of players just being open down the field, wide open down the field, kind of the same way that we see in San Francisco. We saw a vanilla, plain Jane type of offense, and maybe it was because they didn't have the preseason. But if this football team wants to beat the good teams, which last year they struggled to do, they have to find a way offensively to do something totally different than they did in the first week.
Oh, come on, Brian. Did you really think you could teach an old dog new tricks? I mean, everybody thought that, but you're right, man. There was only a few little wrinkles here. I absolutely feel bad for Coach McCarthy. He is in the worst spot you can be in as a coach. Let's look at this graphic and see all the teams with new head coaches. And you tell me, out of all these coaches, these 5 coaches, who has more pressure? It's Coach McCarthy. Nobody. And here's why.
Without a doubt.
Listen, he's talking about this honeymoon. They've been on this honeymoon since Tony Romo bobbled the snap in the playoffs. We've been talking about this team as if they've been the New England Patriots. Every single year, every single week, we're talking about them being contenders, and they haven't done anything. Now, I do think they have everything they need. I do like Coach McCarthy as a leader, but yes, as the play caller and being creative, it's just not there. I just think he's in a tough spot, and I think it's time for them to move on. This is all about what they can change on offense, and I don't put it on Coach McCarthy because he's not going to change. But who can change is Dak Prescott. Okay, Nick, when you look at Dak, he needs to run more. I talked about it yesterday. He's so dynamic as a runner. We saw it on 3rd down when the game was on the line just the other night. He needs to do that in the 1st quarter, the 2nd quarter, 3rd quarter, and the 4th quarter. He needs to do that every time he can.
Brandon, you're absolutely
Brian,
right. Wilds, can I?
Go ahead.
Oh, I apologize, Wilds. Can I? You're the person that does the analogies on the show, so I want to run one by you to continue Mike McCarthy's metaphor of our honeymoon is over. Because if you're a Cowboys fan, you feel like you're on your 2nd marriage, and right after the honeymoon, you're like, oh my God, she's the exact same person as my ex, and I'm terrified. It's like, wait, did we lose a close game? Check. Was play calling curious? Check. Was the clock management disastrous? Check. Did we have a vanilla offense? Check. It's like, this is why I'm not, like, I've moved on, yet I feel like I'm in the exact same place. So if you're, listen, I picked the Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl, Wilds, so I'm not abandoning ship after 1 week. But a lot of the same bugaboos that bit them last year were why they lost week 1, Wilds.
So I'll throw it to Brian. What do you want to see creatively, specifically? Because to the untrained eye, I'm like, if CeeDee Lamb gets that 1st down, it's a different ballgame. Like, I like him going forward, but maybe they kick that field goal. But do you want to see, did you want to see just for the sake of like sending a message, some wild play down the field, something super creative? What did you want to see specifically?
No, I wanted to see an offense that was much more wide open. An offense that uses shifts and motions early on, before the play even starts, just to get a defense off balance, to put a defense in a bad situation. There were just too many times I felt like the defense had a very good idea of exactly what the Cowboys were going to do. And probably it's because of what Brandon pointed out, that Mike McCarthy hasn't changed very much, which in everything that he said before the season, he had changed a lot. He has been in the lab trying to figure out how to do different things in the NFL, bring out different things for this football team. I want to see an explosive offense that's going down the field, that's going to be attacking. You have 3 wide receivers that can go get it. Go allow those guys to go down the field and make some plays. And I think that Dak has the ability to throw the ball down there and get those completions. I would love to see a lot more of Tony Pollard out of the backfield. His ability to affect the game with his speed and quickness, I still think is there. And I'll say this. You look at the next 4 games that the Cowboys have. Atlanta, at Seattle, Cleveland, and the Giants. If they don't find a way I think they'll beat Cleveland and the Giants, the last 2 of this next 4. But if they don't find a way to win at least 3 of these next 4, then they're going to be in the same situation as they were last year, beating the bad teams and losing to the good teams, and that's a bad situation.
And as we said before the season started, this is a relatively easy division for them. This is their opportunity. Hey, Big Ben able to shake off the rust last night on Monday Night Football. Are the Steelers looking like contenders? Next, first things first. You were on it, Brandon Marshall.
Bang, bang.
It was supposed to be a new chapter for the Browns after last season. New coaching staff, a healthy OBJ, a revamped offensive line, and yet, second verse, same as the first. Baker struggled badly. Odell was a non-factor. Complete disconnect between the two. Head coach Kevin Stefanski said the disconnect is something, quote, we have to get to the bottom of. Mystery. Brandon, this isn't a new relationship. This is a veteran wide receiver. This is a third-year quarterback. These are 2 people who spent all last season together. If you spent 17 games with a quarterback, I would like to believe you'd have some chemistry there already built in. But what did you make of what Stefanski said about his 2 stars?
Yeah, also let's add a rookie head coach in the mix there. You know, he's jumping the gun here. He needs to take a chill pill. But obviously, you know, when a coach comes out in week 1 and make that type of statement, it says that this is a point of emphasis in the entire building. When you go out and you get Odell Beckham Jr., you're thinking that this kid is going to come in and change the locker room. He's going to change the outcome of games. And he hasn't done that in his time in Cleveland. Now, when you really look at it, and I spent time last night just watching every single play. And I went back and I watched it over and over and over again. And what I saw was Coach actually called a good game. He put Odell in place. There's so many different ways you can approach getting your number 1 receiver involved. You can leave him out there and you can say, look, when it's one-on-one, we're coming to you. Or you can move him around so you can make it hard for the defensive coaches to scheme and figure out where he's at. And what they did is they put Odell all over the place. They put him at X wide receiver on the backside, on the short side of the field. They put him at Z. They gave him space. They put him in the slot. On first down, they went play action. They took their shots down the field. They tried to go for those chunk plays. They just did a great job on the Baltimore Ravens side of getting under Odell's routes. So if I'm coach, I just sit back and say, look, Odell, this is not your game, right? That's how you should have approached this, because you know going in, the Baltimore Ravens traditionally do a good job of taking out the number 1 wide receivers when they're outside the numbers. So what you should have done, and if I'm coach moving forward, I'm going to these guys and I'm like, look, Odell, I'm going to get you involved in the screen game. I'm going to throw these 1-yard smoke routes. I'm going to throw these 1-yard slant routes just to get you going. Odell's like a basketball player, and a lot of these diva, high-profile wide receivers, and I like to throw my name in that category when I was playing as well, all we want is to be involved early. Just throw us a little hitch route, throw us a little bubble route, and everything else will fall in line. You don't need the big chunk plays. You don't need the 20-yard in cuts. You don't need the play-action 15-yard comeback and it goes down the field, because you only get 2 or 3 of those opportunities in a game because because teams are going to double you. Teams are going to roll coverage to you. So if I'm coach, I'm taking a deep breath, and I'm trying to get my guy involved early, because the last thing you want is a young Baker Mayfield who can get the job done and still has so much to learn, and he's on his own maturation process. He's going through his own journey. You don't want this guy dropping back thinking about, oh, where's Odell? I got to get the ball to Odell, because if I don't get it to Odell, he could be on the sideline getting into it with the net. You don't want that. You want him to organically and naturally go through his offense, his progression.
So listen, it's true. I mean, there's two things here, and I mean, Jenna can roll her eyes, but one of them is that the reason you have a #1 wide receiver is so he dictates the number count of the defense. If you double team him, then you have a numerical advantage. You're against 9 defenders with the rest of your guy, and you play with the rest of the field. If you don't double team him, then you go to him. Like that part is simple, and that is why true star #1 receivers are valuable. But on the part that understandably for many was making Jenna and others roll their eyes, that's the emotional coddling part of this. And that is where we can say we all wish everyone had Larry Fitzgerald's disposition, but most guys don't. And a lot of wide receivers are much closer to Odell or Brandon Marshall's disposition than they are Larry Fitzgerald. And this is because, and Brandon, I've heard you say this, and this is a point that I've made independent of this for years, which is it is the single most dependent position in all of sports. Pick any, if you're a great basketball player, you winning or losing, you can't maybe dictate on your own, but you can get your own buckets, you can get your own stops. In baseball, no matter what your teammates are, you are going to get your at-bats every game, or you're a pitcher, you're going to get to try to strike people out. Every other player on the field, you're a lineman, you can win your one-on-one battle. You're a running back, you can, unless you're Saquon last night and you're just drawing totally dead, you usually can you hit holes. If you are a receiver, you could, in theory, play a perfect game. And Odell didn't, by the way, nothing close to it. But you could and end with 0 catches. And that has been your life since you started playing football. It leads to some emotional volatility. It leads to some woe is me moments. It leads to some crises of confidence, I would imagine. It is the coach's job to know who his most important personnel are and to get through to them in that regard. So a question I would have for you, Brandon, is especially early in your career. You were always emotional, but early in your career, you were really emotional. And just like Odell, they always had a camera on you on the sideline. For your better coaches, what did they do to, what did they do to try to get you in the right mental space so you could play your best football?
Yeah, a #1 wide receiver could be your biggest asset or could be your biggest detriment to your team. And Coach Shanahan and Jeremy Bates, Jay Cutler, I think they did a phenomenal job when we were in Denver. They knew I wanted to be involved. They knew getting me involved was beneficial to our team's success. So what they would do is they would literally come to me before games and say, Brandon, Wednesday, when we're starting game planning for the opponent of that week, they would come to me and say, Brandon, this is not your game, but here's what we're going to do to get you involved. We're going to throw you a quick screen. We're going to throw you a bubble. And then in the third quarter, we'll see how things line up. But if it's not looking good, we're going to get you involved again with the same game plan, just throwing you a screen and a bubble. And I was okay with that. And I think you just got to be transparent with these type of wide receivers, and you got to be honest. So when it comes to Odell, I think it's super simple. Just line the guy up at the X wide receiver, and when it's one-on-one, go to him. And then when they're doubling him, just try to find a way to get him involved in the screen game. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be fancy. You don't have to over-scheme it. Just simplify it. And it'll make it easier for everyone in the building, from the play caller to Baker Mayfield, who needs it the most, and then also Odell. Coach Shanahan, Jay Cutler, Jeremy Bates did a phenomenal job with managing me, and that's why year in and year out I was able to have 100+ catches every single year, because half of them came from me just catching a simple bubble screen. We looked at it as just a extended run play. That's what we looked at it as. Like, look, if Brandon picks up 4, that's equivalent to our running back picking up 4 or 5 yards. We're in good position on 3rd down.
But Brandon and Nick, you've been one of the biggest Odell defenders in the media. He did have 10 targets. And I know the Ravens have a great defense. He had 10 targets. He had 3 receptions for 22 yards.
Had a chance.
So the idea that Tuesday morning that we need to come and be like, we need to do more stuff for Odell, I think that's the reason for some of the public pushback on the Odell narrative.
So I think that's where the numbers lie a bit, because Brandon, you mentioned you watched every snap. So of those 10 targets, 3 were knocked down by Marcus Peters or the safety. Like 3 were pass deflections. Yep. Another 3 were wildly errant passes by Baker. You had 1 drop by Odell, and then 3 catches. Like, I mean, so he did, but none of them were, only one of them was what you're talking about, a layup. Let's just get him involved, immediate one-step, boom, go. But the other side of this, just real quick, because I think it's important. Listen, Baker had the 2nd most picks of anyone in football this year. Last year. He started this year on the very first drive with an interception. Like, Odell is always going to be a center of attention, and he brings that on himself in large regard. But, and Jenna, where I push back somewhat on some of your criticism of Odell, you have been thus far spot on about Baker. And Baker said he was, and his comments after this game have been better, but his play in week 1 looked a lot like last year. And so Baker's the other piece of this, where he's got to be far, far better moving forward.
Correct, I agree. And Odell is at the mercy of Baker, and when Baker's already struggling right out of the gate, that's a lot of pressure to put on your star wide receiver. Time for Take Your Pick. Nuggets Clippers Game 7 tonight, 9 p.m. The winner advances to face the Lakers. Kevin Wiles, let's start with you. Who wins tonight?
Yeah. Oh, I'm going Kawhi with a big game, and Joker also has a big game, but I think they put the clamps on Jamal Murray. Also, big win for the Celtics. A little bonus pick from Kevin Wiles.
Oh, bonus pick. Hey, Brandon.
No, you got to go with the Nuggets. They have all the momentum. I just don't see how you stop this team, especially if they're finding the basket. I think you're going to see a big game from Harris. You're going to see a big game from Michael Porter Jr., and then we're going to see an interesting Western Conference Finals.
Yep. Bad game by Paul George. Nick Wright gets to be the only person in America to get this series exactly right. Nuggets in 7 from the very beginning. Never wavered, America. We finish it off tonight, Jenna. Let's go.
Gotta go.
Cash those futures bets.